All right. So one of the things I think that's going to really be beneficial as we're growing our businesses is having the ability to adapt and flex. I think the recent history of e-commerce has taught us that that's really important. So I'm really excited to have on somebody today that can help us with that general concept. So excited to have with me today Todd Welch from Entrepreneur and Venture, who's going to talk about sourcing and wholesale, and whether you're currently selling wholesale or you're a private label seller and you're thinking about adding wholesale to your repertoire, so to speak, so that you have more revenue streams coming in. Really excited to get this conversation going with Todd. Todd, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, for sure, Kevin. So I really appreciate you having me on the show and look forward to diving into wholesale here.
Yeah, so wholesale is one of those things that's been on my list for 2020. And I would say if I've made a mistake so far this year, it's not putting as much focus on it as I should. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because I've had some other people in the wholesale world, like Dylan Carter from Wholesale Made Easy podcast, as well as Trent Deersmid from Bright Ideas Ecommerce podcast. And you and I have talked before about wholesale, but I think it's going to be especially beneficial for the listeners because I think the way you present it could make it pretty easy to get into, and a lot of the fears people have getting into wholesale, I think would be can be quelched, so to speak, if that's the right word, that you can help people with that. So if you don't mind, just real quick, give people a little bit of your background in e-commerce.
Yeah, so basically, I guess my e-commerce adventure really started way back when I was about 14 years old, when I started a little website for teenagers to chat and play games and stuff like that. And I started making like $300-400 a month on that. But that was like in the early days of the internet boom. And so
That's
that went
awesome,
away.
because I was working at McDonald's when I was a teenager, and I don't think I made that much money. So,
Well, I was working at Speedy In-N-Out Hamburgers, so
oh, okay,
a mini McDonald's or whatever.
gotcha,
So,
gotcha.
but I was doing this on the side. I was getting into computers and stuff like that. And so after that died away, I kind of shifted gears and went into the computer world, got a degree in computer programming and networking, and didn't really get back into e-commerce, unfortunately, until about maybe 8 years ago or so now, where I started dabbling a little bit more in like eBay. And then that shifted over to Amazon, where I started doing retail arbitrage, selling like the same things I was selling on eBay. Actually purchased a few things from China, some bed sets, sent them into Amazon,
Hmm.
and Amazon promptly lost my entire shipment of like 40 bed sets that I
Oh,
sent
wow.
in.
Did they reimburse you for it?
They did. They reimbursed me for
Oh,
the
okay,
whole
good.
thing, like what I would have sold them for.
Ro-
Uh,
Wait, what you sold them for, not even minus what the fees would have been?
well, minus the fees as
Oh, okay,
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
But
basically,
you
what
worked out
I would
well
have
on that
gotten,
one.
it worked out really well. And what I actually came to find out after that is that I was actually a hijacker at that point, and I
Oh,
didn't know it because I just had my bed sets that I had been selling on eBay, and I looked on Amazon and I'm like, that's the same one. So I sent it in and started selling on another person's listing without really
oh,
knowing what I was doing, coming from the eBay world.
right.
But that's kind of how I got started and just really dove into the retail arbitrage, went into the private label, had a few failures there. And now I'm in the wholesale game, and I've got a long ways to go, but things are going pretty well in that area for sure.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Do you mind talking numbers about what are you still doing private label, or is it all wholesale now?
I still have a high private label brand that
Hmm.
is it's only doing like 5 to 10,000 a month on the private label brand. So I'm still trying to get that going. I had a problem with the manufacturer with a defect in the product. So that like messed up this whole year, basically dealing with that. And I'm just starting to get that back going again here. But with wholesale right now, I'm doing about $70,000 in sales a month.
Okay.
My peak has been about 95,000.
Hmm.
So I'm down from my peak, but my profit margin has increased or my ROI, I should say, from about 25-30% up to almost 50% right now as of the recording of this podcast. So that's really what I've been focusing on. And now that I have that profitability set up just right is when I'm going to start pushing to get more sales and break through that $100,000 barrier that I've been
Sure. Okay.
working on for a while.
Let's backtrack there for a second. I want to make sure I understand that. So you're saying 50% gross margins?
ROI.
Oh,
So
ROI. Got
if I spend a
that's true.
dollar on inventory, I'm getting 50 cents profit.
Yes, and I'm glad we clarified that, because I think in wholesale world, everyone talks, from what I've noticed, a lot more about ROI than people do in private label. In private label, people talk more about margin percentages. So
Yep.
I'm sure for
My
the wholesale
profit
people listening,
margin is around 23%, 24% right now.
which is still pretty good. I mean, for wholesale, because at the end of the day, someone else is taking out a slice of that pie, some
Yep.
middleman or the brand itself. So you usually don't do quite as well as you would in private label. So let's talk about, since you do private label and wholesale, can you just real quick give us the pros and cons of each model?
Yeah, for sure. So the pros, I think, of private are what we just talked about. Your profit margin can be a lot higher. You can pretty easily have 50, 60, 70% profit margins potentially on a product.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to make a lot more profit on every dollar that you spend. The other benefit is, if you enjoy this anyways, is
Mm-hmm.
you can build your own brand and become maybe a recognized brand,
Mm-hmm.
and, kind of like Nike, Reebok, and all those big companies, very similar, just on a smaller scale. So that is part I really enjoy in private label, and that's why I'm still doing some of it. Plus the product is a passion product. So I just want to keep moving with that. The downsides, though, of private label are basically what makes wholesale so alluring. And that's, with private label, you might have to put out 10, 20, 30, $50,000 to buy inventory. And it's going to take you 60 to 90 days maybe to get that inventory into the US, and then maybe another 60 to 180 days to sell through that inventory, depending on how much you're carrying. And so you have that long window, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you get your products in and you sell them doesn't mean you're going to have enough money to make that reorder right away with private label. With wholesale, what's really nice is you significantly shorten that window. So I typically carry between 30 and 60 days worth of inventory in Amazon. And right now, as we are recording this, we're going through the crisis that we're going through right now. So I've shortened that down to actually 25 days. And it only takes me maybe 1 week to 2 weeks to reorder product. Basically, send an email off to the supplier and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I need 100 units of this. They ship it out the next day or two, and it's in Amazon, 7 to 14 days later. So you have a lot shorter window, and you can turn your inventory a lot faster. So that's kind of where the difference is. In the high profit margin is really nice in private label,
Mm-hmm.
but where you can really make that up in wholesale is multiplying your money. So if you're turning your money every 30 to 60 days, you can very quickly get up to the same kind of profit that you'd be looking with private label.
Yeah, because that's a good point, because really what it comes down to is dollar in, how many dollars out, and then how many times can you do that. So with private label, realistically, if you think about it, you're doing, generally, if you're doing 2.5 to 4 turns a year of your inventory, you're doing good. So that's like, every 3 months ish, you're turning over your inventory, 3-4 months, I should say. Whereas with wholesale, and what everyone talks about is that you're doing it more often. So for example, here you're saying, let's say 30, 60 days. So that's 6 to 12 turns of your inventory. So that means, if you think about the law of compounding, you're compounding more often. It's that saying of, if you had a penny and you doubled it every day, you're like a billionaire or whatever at the end of 30 days. So it's kind of that same philosophy that the more times you can turn over and get that extra dollar in, $1.50 out, even though in private label it might be dollar in, $2 or $2.50 out. But if you're doing it more often, you can be better off in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really good model in my opinion. I don't want to make it sound like it's easy or anything like that or too good to be true, because you still have like the cash flow problems with private
Mm-hmm.
label, because you're usually getting like either credit card terms or maybe net 30 if you're lucky, net 45. I've got a
Mm.
couple that are net 60 thankfully, but you're usually not turning your inventory as fast as you're having to reorder, because you have that time that Amazon might take forever to check it in, or you got the shipping time, maybe you've got a little stop in between to do some prepping. So
Mm-hmm.
you're still running into that cash flow problem a little bit. I don't think that's ever going to go away, but it's a lot smaller in my opinion in wholesale, and like I said, you're able to turn that inventory a lot faster.
Yeah, and theoretically, you could pivot into different products more quickly because you're not creating the listings. You're using someone else's listings in most cases, right?
Exactly, yep. So we're selling other people's products. So basically the people that you call hijackers, if they jump on your private label
Right.
listing, that's us, but we are either authorized by the brand to do that, or the brand just doesn't care and we're selling their products. So we're either buying directly from the brand, or we're buying from distributors, which will usually carry tens or hundreds of different brands in their catalog.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So just to put it in perspective, I know a lot of people listening to this, maybe they're private label and they're not familiar with wholesale. So in private label, oftentimes people might have 5, 10, 20 SKUs, and that's their total catalog. How many SKUs do you have that you sell?
I think right now I am around 600 and some different SKUs that I carry. Not all of them are active all the time. Sometimes they come and go depending on the price, because when you're in wholesale, a lot of times you're competing with other people. So the price might go up and down. So I make it a point to order the most profitable products whenever I do an order, because we all have limited money. So we need to make the most profit. So I use my software, Restock Pro, that I use. I look at the most profitable products that I need to order and
Uh-huh.
order those ones. So every product in my catalog isn't always in stock because of that, limited cash flow sometimes. But yeah, quite a few different products that we carry in wholesale.
Gotcha. And one of the things I just want to also go over here is that I know some people might be like panicking, thinking of the thought of running out of product, or having 600 listings to keep on top of, but it's different than in private label. So you're not writing the copy for all these or taking the images, right?
No, not necessarily. So I do that for some of my brands that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
especially if I get like an exclusive agreement with them where I'm going to be their only Amazon seller. So in that case, I'm treating it like a private label brand and updating the listings and other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
With other ones, if I'm not an exclusive, sometimes I'll still update the listings,
Mm-hmm.
because I like to look for products sometimes that might have a sales rank of like 2, 3, 400,000, which a lot of people wouldn't
Mm.
look at. But I look at other things in there, like if they have a handful or a bunch of reviews, and then I look at the Keep a Graph. And if you guys aren't familiar with Keep a Graph, it basically shows like the sales rank history and the price history of the product.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I can look back and see if it's sold well in the past. And if it has, then I look at potentially testing that product. And here's the other nice thing about wholesale is I only order like 12 or 20 of that product, send it
Mm.
in, fix up the listing, and see if I can get it selling. So in that case, then I might be the only person selling that product, and I'm just trying to get traction. So I do that sometimes where I'm updating the listings, but a lot of times you're just throwing your product on what's already there and it starts selling. When you go out of stock, we don't usually have to worry about that because a lot of times there's other people who are selling it as well. So it's not like the product is out of stock. It's just us that's out of stock.
Got it. Got it. So basically, some other seller theoretically is picking up the slack of keeping the ranking and the flywheel going for that particular product. Okay, so another thing just want to dive into a little bit more, as you mentioned, you might order like 10 units of a product. So like people are so used to minimum order quantities, because if you're ordering from a factory, your minimum order quantities might be 500 or 1,000 or whatever the case is. So you're ordering very small numbers. What are minimum order quantities from like a distributor or a brand?
It varies quite widely depending on the distributor. Sometimes they might have a minimum, sometimes they won't. Usually it's like a dollar amount. They'll have maybe $500 minimum order or $1,000 minimum order. And the products, usually they don't have a minimum order per product, except for maybe like a case pack, which could be 6, 12, 24,
Okay.
something like that, depending on what the normal box is, so that they don't have to be opening them up and sending them out.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, you can very easily order that really small amount. And that's usually what I tell everybody to do, because the big thing with wholesale is that you can really minimize your risk. And that's one way to do it. You can have those shortened windows of carrying inventory, like we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also test the product. So you just order that really small amount, send it in, get your real world numbers on what it actually sold for you, what your profit was, your sales velocity, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then make a reorder off of those numbers, or maybe
Mm.
not reorder it if it didn't work out.
Gotcha. So that's the nice thing, is you can test. And so if you order 10, 20 units, and if you have to sit on those because they just don't sell or whatever the case is, then I guess you don't really have, it's not as risky as if you order 1,000 units of a product and for whatever reason you don't move, or you have to do very expensive PPC. Now, are you running PPC on these products?
Sometimes, yes. So again, for like the exclusive agreements that I have, then yeah, I'm running more ads for that. Some of the other ones, it all depends on the profit margins. So if the profit margins or the ROI, like I said, I usually go off the ROI.
Mm-hmm.
I think it more accurately portrays the money
Right.
that you're making. If my ROI is really small, like 30%, then I'm probably not going to run ads. But if it's
Mm.
more like 40, 50, or 60% or more, then there's more of that leeway to run some ads. Usually I'll start off with like the 25-cent ad campaign, which people might be familiar with, where you just do like an auto campaign with a 25-cent bid and kind of pick up the low hanging fruit.
Oh, wow.
So that'll just inject some sales in there and get the rank moving. But sometimes you don't even need to do that. If it's a really good selling product and it's selling 500 or 1,000 a month, then you just get on that listing. And Amazon does what's called sharing the buy box. So if there's like 4 people within a similar price range of the buy box, Amazon will try to rotate them into the buy box, so everybody's kind of sharing the sales,
And
assuming
that's
everything's equal.
with people all around the same price.
Yeah, price is the biggest factor. Usually, we estimate like 2% within the buy box if you want to be
Okay.
conservative, 1% within the buy box at a minimum. So somewhere in there. If you are the same price as the buy box, then you're definitely going to get that rotation. But otherwise, if you're like even a penny or 2 pennies different, then it really varies depending on the product, because then other factors are coming in. So like, for example, let's say I send in 12 units of a product
Mm-hmm.
and the other seller that I'm competing against has 1,000 units. Their units are probably spread all over the United States. So if all of my 12 units are in California and somebody's shopping in New York, they're probably going to show the other guy's listing because they were able to get it there in the 2 days.
Mm.
So that's, other factors come into it, but the biggest one is price.
Got it. Got it. All right. So this sounds like it's pretty easy. You just order 10 products and just go with it because, like when I go on Alibaba and I say, hey, I want to find out about this product, 3-4 years later, they're still contacting me that I don't even remember talking to them, but like they're acting like they're my best friend and trying to get me to place an order. Is it kind of the same way? You just reach out to a bunch of people and then they just hound you forever?
Not really hound you. It's not really like, you'll get on some email lists by contacting different brands and distributors, but that's the biggest thing that is different than wholesale, or with wholesale versus private label,
Right.
retail arbitrage, all the other ones. So with private label and retail arbitrage, if you just want to sit in your basement and not talk to anybody and just send products around the world and
Hmm.
sell them, you can do that. But with wholesale, it really is all about the relationships that you build with people. So you're getting on the phone and you're talking with maybe the owner of a business or the sales manager, or if it's a distributor, a lot of
Hmm.
times you're talking to a sales representative. And basically, you're building a relationship with them, getting to know them, maybe get to know what their hobbies are, their family, if they have dogs, things like that, so that you have stuff to talk about when you call them, because you want it to be more than just a transactional business. Because the
Mm.
biggest thing in wholesale that people have trouble with is they open some accounts with distributors or a brand and there's nothing profitable. I hear that all the time from, coaching students or just people in Facebook that
Sure.
open accounts and nothing is selling or nothing is profitable. Because in the wholesale world, discounting is the norm. You have to be asking for discounts and getting additional discounts that other people are not getting, because the initial prices that they send you are almost always, like 98% of the time, not the bottom price that they'd be willing to sell it for. They might discount that price 5% all the way up to maybe 50%, depending on how much you're ordering, and also maybe, how nice you are with them and finding out about additional discounts that aren't available to other people.
Gotcha. So it's that saying you catch more bees with, or flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yep.
So always be really nice to them. So what are some ways that, and oh, also, are you able to get approved for just about every account you try to set up? Because that's one of the things I've always heard is with wholesale, it's like, I got to sell them just to even allow me in.
Yeah. It's gotten a lot harder with going brand direct. So
Okay.
if you're trying to open directly with a brand, it's gotten a lot harder because there's so many unprofessional Amazon sellers out there
Hmm.
who are, either being annoying or rude or not following through on their commitments, or
Hmm.
they negotiate like a 25% discount and by saying that they're going to order like 1,000 a month, and then they make an order of 100 or 50 or something like
Right.
that.
And then they never buy again.
Exactly. So it's gotten a lot harder, and you have to figure out how to get around that. And by building that relationship is how you do that. One of the things that works sometimes for me is like I'll look at all their products on Amazon and find maybe a listing that's not doing very well, but could be doing better. Maybe it's only selling like 5 or 10 a month, and the
Hmm.
sales rank is low, but it's got, good reviews, high star rating, and things like that. So I'll say something like, after we're talking a little bit, like, I looked at this product here. The listing is really bad. It's not selling very well. Perhaps maybe I could just buy that one product from you, fix the listing, show you what I can do, get it selling really well, and start selling that one product. And then if you like what I do there, you can open up the rest of your catalog for me. So I've had some success with that. But no matter what, you got to keep in mind that if you're contacting brands, you're going to have like a 5% open rate. And that's doing pretty well.
Wait,
If you're
you're saying open rate of open accounts?
getting an open account, maybe
Okay.
5
Gotcha.
to 10% is doing well. So if you're
Got it.
contacting 100 brands, you might get 5 to 10 of those that allow you to open up an account. Obviously, the better you are at sales. So if you've had
Hmm.
like B2B sales experience in the past, that would be very helpful to kind of break down those barriers and stuff like that. But otherwise, you just learn it as you go along. I like to read sales books and stuff like that. One way to kind of get into it a little bit easier and get some quick wins is to contact distributors. And distributors are the ones I mentioned that carry like 100 or maybe 1,000 brands in their catalog. And they're a lot easier to open with because they're more, you're dealing with a sales agent. And unless they have a policy that says no Amazon sellers or no third party sellers or something,
Hmm.
then you're pretty much going to open an account because the salesperson wants to sell more product. But
Right.
then it's about building that relationship and finding out about those additional discounts you can get. But your open rate there is going to be more like 50, 60% through distributors.
Oh, gotcha. So about half of the ones you contact, you can open with. Now, I'm imagining if you're able to open about half, most other people are able to open up about half. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking, okay, am I more likely to have more people sharing the buy box then?
Yes. On the ones that are really easy to open, then that's always kind of disappointing because
Right.
probably either the margins are going to be really small or not profitable at all, or there's going to be 100 sellers on there. And in that case, that's where I'm looking for those like listings that should be doing better but aren't. So that's
Mm,
what I kind of look for there. And then I can sell those for maybe 3, 4, 6 months before other people take advantage of what I did and start jumping on as well. But
gotcha.
the hardest ones to open are the better because it's more likely you're going to find profitable products. And also, the harder the product is to find. So, like when I open an account with a distributor, and most of the time you can get like an Excel spreadsheet with UPC numbers and everything that you can load into software, match everything up to Amazon and see how it looks.
Hmm.
The ones that are like, oh, we don't have that, you just got to go on our website, or even better than that is like if they just have a PDF catalog or something. Those ones I really like. A lot of people think that's kind of crazy, but now I have to go through and usually hire someone either on Fiverr or a data entry person to like make a spreadsheet out of the catalog or make a spreadsheet out of the website.
Right.
And not everybody's going to do that. So the odds of finding good profitable products go up on those kind of ones.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, because that's one of the things I've heard of that a lot of things are kind of counterintuitive in wholesale. So if they're giving you something, and chances are they're giving everyone else a PDF, because they're probably used to faxing it to people
Yeah.
or something. So they, if they're making it harder and not giving you a spreadsheet, so you can't load it into your tools as easily, that now it's the same thing for everyone else. So other people probably just gave up. So that's a good point.
Yeah. There's
Um,
a lot of old school distributors out there.
Right, exactly, because they're not in business for Amazon. Amazon is just one of many channels they probably have. And one thing I've noticed is people outside of Amazon selling space oftentimes almost have kind of a negative connotation of Amazon, and it's probably more because they feel that Amazon's taking some of their sales away, rather than looking at it as an opportunity. How do we work with this? Oftentimes they're like, "Oh, Amazon is terrible because they take my sales away." Well,
Yeah.
figure out how to make it work. People do all
Yeah.
the
It's
time.
it's not as much taking sales away. So you're talking about like a brand owner, right?
Yeah, maybe a brand owner, or I'm even talking about retail store owners too.
Okay. Yeah, retail stores definitely are not going to like Amazon. More and more people are always shopping online, but
Hmm.
brands, usually their biggest hangup with Amazon is that they can't control Amazon.
Mm,
So, like in the retail world, it's very easy to know who's selling your product. And if they're selling below, say, your MAP pricing, if you have MAP, minimum advertised price,
hmm.
they can just cut them off, right? But on Amazon, there's so many like almost anonymous sellers that they have a really hard time controlling map breakers. If your product is really popular, you're almost very quickly going to start getting knockoffs from China and other places.
Gotcha.
So those are more of the kind of things that they run into, and why they don't want to open up new accounts with Amazon sellers a lot. So you kind of got to break down those barriers. But once you can get around them and start helping them and showing what you can do, it can be pretty profitable.
Yeah, yeah, definitely sounds like it. So, all right. So the nice thing too, I'm also seeing in the wholesale world is you can flex a little bit more with the products you're selling. Cause like right now, you kind of, I've noticed for a lot of us in the private label space, as we're recording this, the big thing is essential versus non-essential. So if you're essential grocery, home type goods, like something people like need, you're probably going to get stuff into the warehouse. You're probably also going to get it shipped really quickly. Whereas if you're considered non-essential, which a lot of private label products are, it might take longer. People are less likely to buy it just because, they're like, as we're recording this, people are cooped up in their houses and they can't leave. So they need basic supplies. So are you noticing you're able to flex more to what the changes in demand in the market?
Yeah, for sure. So I've kind of built my business more like a general store. So I've
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of different products in a lot of different categories. Usually, when people are just getting started, I recommend starting in a niche that you're familiar with and that
Mm,
you like, because then you can speak the lingo when you're talking to people on the phone. Because that's the other thing with the wholesale is you're going to have to be jumping on the phone talking with people, not just shooting emails.
right.
But yeah, so basically what I've done since I've already built out a catalog is that when Amazon said, okay, you can't send any more product in unless it's in these categories, which, like household and food and a few other categories, some pet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just basically shifted my purchases to products that I had in those categories.
Mm,
Thankfully, one of the products that I just recently picked up an exclusive discount. It's not an exclusive agreement, but an exclusive discount on is a cough medicine. So the sales of that have gone like through the
oh
roof
yeah.
here.
People are preparing and stuff like that. And it's just flu
Exactly.
season in general.
Yeah. So sales of that have really gone up. And then I've shipped in more of my food related products, home and kitchen products, and things like that. And I've also shortened my days of stock, which I think I mentioned before. Before I had like 30 to 60 days, depending on the product. And now I'm down to like 25 days, maybe even 20 days,
Mm,
just in case, something happens and that product stops selling. I'm not stuck with a bunch of product in there. So that's the big benefit. Yeah, you can shift wherever you need to go a lot more easily than private label for sure.
nice, nice, nice. Okay. So any other tips that you would have for someone either starting and they're going the wholesale route or they want to start wholesale as kind of a side business to their private label?
Sure. So I think, start out small. You don't have to jump in with $100,000 or $10,000 even. You can start opening accounts and maybe throw $1,000 into it or $5,000. But the hardest thing is just going to be opening those accounts. So usually what I recommend to people, if you're really interested in wholesale, make a list of 500 distributors and 100 brands. So this is
Okay.
if you seriously want to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different ways to do that using like reverse sourcing and searching for distributors on Google. And I have videos on that if anybody wants to check them out. But basically, what you're doing is you're finding products that sell well on Amazon and then finding that product's website, adding that product to your list, and then searching Google for that product's brand name distributors and finding all the distributors. Just keep going through all the Google pages
Mm-hmm.
and adding those to your list, the contact information. Once you have a big list, then you start contacting, calling, emailing, and everything above to open the accounts.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Well, this is definitely helpful, and I think it's definitely something people should consider adding to their toolbox, so to speak, because I like the idea of being able to pivot a little bit more than you can necessarily once you kind of made your bed in private label. If your sales start going down, it's harder to get that growth. Um, it's still possible, but it's one of those things where I can see there's more kind of potential to pivot. So, and it doesn't have to be an either or, you could do both. So if anybody wanted to check out more of what you've got out there with resources and things of that nature, where would they go?
Yeah, so our website is entrepreneuradventure.com. So they can get us there. Same name on like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram if they want to check us out there. And then I'm going to have a checklist that people can check out too if they want. And it's basically a checklist on how to get started, the kind of the beginning steps. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't have a business at all in Amazon to get started, and then how to start opening accounts and things like that. So you can basically just kind of follow the checklist. If anybody's interested in that, they can get that over at entrepreneuradventure.com/checklist.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been really helpful. And I really glad that you came on today to talk about this. And I think it's very timely, especially with all that's going on in the world and, how we're having to kind of reconsider things going on in our business. And I think this is definitely something that will open some people's eyes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's really hard right now to think past maybe what we're dealing with, but times like this that the economy is down, people are struggling. This is where, you can really build out of it and come out the other side strong if you start whatever you want to do now. And, take advantage is not a great word because that sounds negative, but, there's a lot of things that get better during a crisis or
Mm-hmm.
become easier. So, take advantage of that in a good way and start building towards your future now instead of waiting until things start getting better again, and then it might be too late.
Exactly. 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 All right. So this was a great conversation. Thanks so much for coming on today, Todd.
For sure. Thank you, Kevin.
Great advice. Thanks.